Mark Levin leaned toward the microphone, smirking as he mocked Jasmine Crockett's law degree. The audience chuckled while cameras zoomed in on his grin. For a moment, it seemed like another effortless victory for the seasoned host. But Crockett didn't flinch. She sat composed, hands folded, waiting her turn. And when she finally responded, her words landed so sharply that the laughter stopped mid-air. Levin's smirk faded, and silence swept the room. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share where you're watching from. The crowd believed Levin controlled the stage. He was a veteran broadcaster, long known for ridiculing guests. But what most overlooked was Crockett, measured, patient, already preparing her reply. The studio lights reflected across the polished desk where Levin leaned forward with confidence. For years, this had been his arena. A conservative commentator with a biting style, he thrived on mocking rivals while his supporters laughed. Guests often stumbled, and the formula rarely failed him. That evening, he expected no different. His eyes narrowed, lips curled into a familiar grin, as he dismissed Crockett with a casual wave. The crowd leaned closer, anticipating his punchline across from him. Crockett remained still, posture steady, face unreadable. She didn't react to his jokes. She didn't rush to defend herself. Instead, she listened quietly, her silence more effective than any interruption. The subject was constitutional law, Crockett's area of expertise. Yet Levin ignored substance, choosing instead to ridicule her degree and question her school's credibility. His audience erupted in laughter, convinced the debate was already decided. But while they laughed, Crockett observed, letting him use up his energy. Years of courtroom experience had trained her to withstand pressure, to let opponents overplay their hand before delivering her case. To most in the room, she appeared cornered. In reality, she was preparing the response that would turn the exchange upside down. The stage was set, Levin glowing under the lights, Crockett composed in the shadows. But soon, the spotlight would shift. Levin believed she was trapped, with the crowd firmly on his side. Yet her silence was no retreat. It was her opening move. And with her first words, the atmosphere changed. Levin leaned back, enjoying himself. He jabbed again, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Congresswoman Crockett with that law degree. You think you can lecture me on constitutional law? The crowd roared, the rhythm of the show unfolding just as he wanted. Dismiss credentials. Control the narrative. Keep the audience entertained. But Crockett didn't smile or deflect. She tilted her head slightly, leaned toward the MIC, and spoke in a steady, deliberate voice. Mr. Levin, I didn't just earn a law degree. I practiced it. I've stood in courtrooms, argued cases, defended rights. Tell us, when have you done the same? The laughter stopped instantly. The pause grew heavy. The audience, once loud, suddenly went still. Reporters looked up, sensing the shift. Even Levin blinked, his trademark grin faltering. Crockett hadn't raised her voice or traded insults. She had asked a simple question, one he couldn't answer. It was a moment the conversation left theatrics and entered reality. And in that instant, the balance of power turned. Levin had expected her to retreat under his pressure. Instead, Crockett pressed forward with facts. The laughter that had filled the room gave way to silence. The question hit hard enough to sting. Levin shifted in his chair, laughing it off, but his rhythm was broken. He tried to recover with a familiar line. I don't need to be a lawyer to understand the Constitution. It was one of his usual applause points, but this time it didn't land. Crockett leaned toward her notes, her tone sharp and measured. For the record, I've argued constitutional claims in state and federal court. I defended civil rights cases, stood before judges, and cross-examined witnesses. That's what a law degree and license are for. She let the words settle before adding, so I'll ask again, Mr. Levin, how many cases have you argued before a judge? The air shifted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Audience members shifted in their seats. The laughter that had carried Levin's momentum vanished. His lips parted, but no clear answer came. He muttered something about being a commentator and educator, but the damage was done. Crockett didn't have to raise her voice. By contrasting her lived legal experience with his lack of it, she flipped the exchange. What started as a joke at her expense now revealed his limits. For the first time that night, Crockett, not Levin, was setting the tempo. Levin tried to laugh it off, but every word made him look thinner behind the armor. Crockett stayed calm, cutting through each deflection. His voice rose as he pushed harder. "You don't have to be a lawyer to understand the Constitution," he repeated, louder this time, hands slicing through the air. He tried to spin Crockett's point into arrogance, framing her as an elitist who believed only lawyers could interpret the law. Normally, the crowd would cheer. Instead, silence lingered. Crockett didn't raise her voice. She leaned back, her tone calm but pointed. "This isn't about whether people can read the Constitution. It's about who has argued its meaning in court. You've mocked my degree. I've used mine to defend rights. That's a difference." A ripple ran through the chamber. Reporters' pens flew across their notepads. Levin's frustration showed. He spoke faster, tossing out terms, trying to grab control. But each word sounded more like defense and dominance. At one point, he jabbed a finger toward her. "Don't lecture me on the law," he snapped. Crockett leaned slightly forward, voice cutting clean. "I don't need to lecture you, Mr. Levin. Your own answer already did that." The crowd gasped. Some even laughed, not at Levin's jokes, but at the precision of her strike. The moderator called for order, but the room had slipped out of Levin's grip. The debate was no longer about volume. It was about credibility. And Crockett was winning. Levin grew louder, almost desperate. "You think just because you have a law degree, that makes you smarter? That makes you the authority here?" It was meant to rally the audience, but it opened the door Crockett had been waiting for. She straightened, folded her notes, and replied with deliberate calm, "No, Mr. Levin. A law degree doesn't make me smarter. Practicing law does. Standing before judges does. Defending clients who had no one else does. Until you've done that, mocking my degree doesn't reflect on me. It reflects on you." The words landed like a gavel strike. The chamber went silent. Reporters looked up, eyebrows raised. Levin opened his mouth, but nothing came. The rhythm, the smack, the confidence, gone. He tried to wave it off, but the laughter never returned. Crockett leaned forward one last time, her voice crisp. "Here's the truth. Degrees don't argue cases. Lawyers do, and that's why I'm not the one embarrassed in this room tonight." Gasps swept through the audience. Applause broke out before the moderator's gavel demanded order, but the moment had already stuck. The soundbite, the headline, the viral clip was sealed. Mark Levin, the broadcaster who built his career on mockery, had been silenced by the very credentials he tried to undermine. Crockett, calm and steady, delivered the moment no one watching would forget. Inside that chamber, she closed the exchange. Outside, her words spread instantly. The hearing had barely ended before clips hit the internet. Journalists replayed the footage, Levin mocking, the crowd laughing, then silence as Crockett's reply landed. The clip ended with his stunned expression, a visual as damning as her words. By the time Levin stepped away from the table, it was already trending. On Twitter, hashtag with Crockett's name shot upward. One user posted, "Mark Levin." The clip went viral with captions like, "Mocked a degree and she buried him with it." Another read, "Degrees don't argue cases. Lawyers do." Cable networks picked it up immediately. CNN replayed the exchange on loop with a banner that read, "Crockett shuts down Levin in heated exchange." MSNBC brought on legal analysts to discuss the accuracy of her point, applauding her for steering the debate back to substance. Even Fox News, usually quick to defend Levin, covered the story, though they framed it as an unfair ambush. Levin's team scrambled to control the damage. Within an hour, his producers issued statements claiming he was only joking and raising a broader point about elitism. But the defense didn't hold. The video wasn't about interpretation. Anyone watching could see it, hear it, and feel the silence that followed Crockett's words. Outside, Crockett faced the press. Reporters crowded in, microphones raised, hoping for another sharp quote. One asked if she regretted embarrassing Levin. She stayed composed. "I don't regret telling the truth. I've stood in too many courtrooms to be intimidated by someone who's never stood before a judge." That single line gave journalists another headline. Legal Twitter dissected it. Activists amplified it. Even neutral commentators admitted it was rare to see someone turn Levin's own sharp style back on him so effectively. What began as mockery had turned into a national discussion about the difference between commentary and practice, between punditry and the actual work of law. And in every retelling, it wasn't Levin shaping the narrative anymore. It was Crockett. Levin's laughter was gone. His comebacks failed. As the hearing closed, it was clear who held the room. What started with Levin commanding attention ended with him slumped in his chair, his earlier confidence stripped away. The same crowd that once laughed at his barbs now sat silent. Taking in the reversal they had witnessed, Crockett gathered her papers without hurry. Reporters shouted her name. Cameras flashed, but her composure never broke. Before stepping from the MIC, she paused. The silence pulled the room toward her once more. Then she said, "Law isn't a punchline. It's a practice. And mocking the work won't change the fact that I've done it." And he hasn't. The words landed with finality. No shouting, no theatrics, just a steady truth that carried more weight than any outburst. The chamber stilled. Levin's eyes dropped, his trademark smirk gone. The contrast was unmistakable. The pundit who thrived on mockery had been silenced by the very credentials he tried to dismiss outside. The line echoed. News anchors repeated it on loop. Activists reposted it with captions like, "Read that again." Even those critical of Crockett admitted the response was devastating. As the cameras pulled back, the image was clear. Crockett walking out steady and composed, while Levin sat staring at his notes, the room no longer his. This wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a reminder of the difference between practicing law and mocking it for ratings. So here's the question. Would you trust a pundit who ridicules a work, or the lawyer who's actually done it? Like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from.